Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation for SAC 7105 regarding the French contrast method and respective applicability to power development. I will start with a brief introduction to the program and explore some important concepts within this type of training and continue with a critical review about its benefits, problems, and compare with other training methods used for the same goal. The French contrast method was introduced by Giles and Committee to track and field athletes, and since then it has been applied to pretty much all other sports that demand high power development. Commonly, it consists of 4 consecutive exercises completed in a circuit of a number of sets, which are generally 3 to 5. The first exercise is a heavy compound performed with around 80 to 90% of 1 repetition max. The second exercise is a plyometric with a slow thread shortening cycle with a similar motor pattern. The third exercise consists of a power-derived exercise with additional weight. And the final movement is an accelerated plyometric or a fast SSC. The prescribed rest between the exercises is generally short, taking around 15 to 20 seconds, but a longer rest period takes place at the end of the set with around 2 to 4 minutes at least. This happens before restarting the circuit again, and it does so due to the extremely taxing nature of the French contrast method. So this is an example of the protocol taken from the Carl Dietz book, Triphasic Training. We can clearly see that it starts with a compound movement with a back squat. It then is followed by the plyometric movement with the slow SSC, the hurdle hops. The third exercise is the half squat jump with additional weight, so this is a weighted jump. And the last exercise is the 15-yard starts as a form of accelerated plyometrics. So really, how does it work? What are the physiological principles behind this protocol? Carl Dietz has claimed that the French contrast method allows for superior physiological and neural adaptations where compared with other training protocols, since it results in increased reactive ability, rate of force development, and maximal velocity. Furthermore, he also states that the French contrast method forces the utilization of lactic or anaerobic capacity to increase, making the athlete more powerful for a longer period of time. Underpinning the training physiology of these programs is the post-activation potentiation mechanism. This phenomenon explains that a previous muscular contraction may acutely enhance performance in a subsequent lighter exercise by increasing its velocity and power output. The phosphorylation of myosin light chains and increased synaptic efficacy have both been referred as the physiological responses that are responsible for these changes. Carl Dietz writes also in this book that it's almost as the nervous system goes into an overdrive, thinking that it's going to lift a heavy load, resulting in an explosive lift of a lighter load. But does PAP really work? What does the research on post-activation potentiation tells us? It can be divided in 2, which are the acute and the chronic adaptations. The acute adaptations mostly relate to its use in warm-up routines or as a mean to increase power output in subsequent plyometric exercises. The chronic adaptations are often the result of complex training programs, which is the case of the French contrast method, where the principle of PAP is fundamental. Some research has linked the use of PAP with actual improvements in performance. Particularly, Gulich in '96 verified this during the bobsled World Championships. The same was true to vertical jump performance, since it also seems to be increased when the principle of PAP is used. Regarding chronic adaptations, it has been shown that complex training is superior to, for example, plyometrics alone for power development measured through the counter movement jump height. However, research can also be ambiguous on its benefits, since there are also a lot of studies which refer that alternating strength and power on training days, which is really a compound training protocol, is actually superior to complex training methods for improving power development. Also, Robbins in 2005 stated that most research where the effects of PAP were studied generally presented poor designs and methodologies, not taking into account different training variables like rest times, volume, and intensity. Another important aspect is that the time course of PAP varies considerably between individuals. So training status, training age, gender are also factors that might affect the strength of the findings for acute adaptations. Furthermore, often the process of PAP is not directly examined, so the results cannot be correlated with PAP only. Even if it is a central principle of these programs, it could be maybe using neuromuscular output, but this is really not commonly used in research. So, summarizing, PAP might be effective in some cases, but the evidence is still limited, and coaches should be aware of this, obviously. So, explore the concept of PAP and its validity. Are there any studies which apply the French contrast method and obtain good outcomes? And how would these compare with other training programs? Well, to my surprise, there were only a few studies regarding the French contrast method and power development. The first one was a study by Baldry and colleagues from 2019, which explored the effects of the French contrast method on explosive strength of triple jump athletes after 8 weeks of training. So this is related to chronic adaptations. It is referred that not only explosive strength was improved, measured through TMJ and sergeant jumps, but also the kinematic parameters of the jump had changed. So this would imply that there would be this would be translated to increased performance of the sport, which could be very relevant to sports coaches. However, after a critical analysis of the study, the flaws were evident. They do not even specify which movement pattern was worked. The exercises are not described, so really the study could not be replicated, and the validity of the outcomes must obviously be considered. The second study was done by a group of Spanish researchers and also explored the potentiation effects of the French contrast method on vertical jump ability. So now we are talking about acute adaptations. The overall design of the study is described in detail, and the methodology is a lot stronger than with the previous referred study. The only setback being that the authors chose an isometric squat for the first exercise, which is not common when implementing this type of protocol. It was also found that CMJ height increased significantly after the completion of the protocol. Furthermore, the authors claimed that the French contrast method was superior to a standard complex training protocol for acute power development. Well, again, after a deeper analysis on the previously referred study, the comparison with the complex training protocol is not really accurate, since the Spanish study included recreational athletes in the French contrast method and compared the findings with national level track and field athletes. The differences between both groups are obviously relevant enough to affect the validity of the statement. So this brings us up to the comparison with other training programs. Similar studies regarding vertical jump performance after concluding different 6 to 8 week programs, both including contrast, complex, and plyometric based protocols, found a comparable increase in performance. And actually Mihalik and colleagues show that in only 3 weeks, both contrast and contrast and compound training programs were effective in increasing lower limb power output and vertical jump height. Additionally, no significant difference is found between both. So where does that leave us regarding the French contrast method? There is, concluding, there is a chance that the protocol has multiple benefits. However, clearly much more research is needed in order to support its implementation. Furthermore, there are some setbacks. Requires a well-trained athlete to be comfortable with plyometric and heavy compounds done in a fatigue state, and requires also long rest periods, and it's also time consuming for the coach. Also, the problems with the French contrast method are similar to every other training program, really. There is a very small number of strong studies, and it's very hard to define the validity of the outcomes with so many variables. Personally, within my coaching philosophy, I am not a huge fan of training programs. The athletes are complex. There are a lot of variables to consider, and it also removes some of the beauty within the specificity of our profession. Sure, understanding the physiological principles underpinning the protocol is very important, and surely it can be applied if it fits the athlete's characteristics and goals, but it should not be regarded as superior to other training methods, not at least until solid research is available. That's it from me. Thank you for listening.